I was standing in the hospital corridor, my hands still shaking and covered in my son's blood, when the doctor came out and said the words that would haunt me forever. If we had arrived 10 minutes later, Leo would have died. 10 minutes. That was all that separated my 4-year-old son from death, and my parents had refused to call for help. But before I tell you how I got here, before I share how I went from being a desperate daughter to someone who finally found the strength to fight back, I need you to do something for me. If this story resonates with you, if you have ever felt trapped by people who were supposed to love you, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories of survival and strength. And please, leave a comment telling me if you have ever had to make an impossible choice between loyalty and survival. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Jessica Marie Martinez, though my mother always hated my middle name. She said it sounded too ethnic, too common, not sophisticated enough for someone from their social circle. When I was 8 years old, she took me to get my birth certificate for a school field trip and actually sighed when she saw my full name printed there. Marie, she said with disgust, as if the word itself offended her. I wanted to name you Catherine or Elizabeth, something classic, something that opens doors. But your father insisted on honoring his mother. Look where that got us. She said this in front of the clerk at the county office, not caring that this stranger was witnessing her shame over her own daughter's name. That should have told me everything I needed to know about who they were, but children are remarkably good at making excuses for their parents. We tell ourselves stories to survive. For 26 years, I existed in a state of perpetual inadequacy, living in a house where love was theoretical and approval was a prize I could never quite win. Nothing I did was ever good enough, smart enough, impressive enough. My father, Richard, was a senior investment consultant at Hartford Financial Group, the kind of man who wore $3,000 Tom Ford suits and drove a BMW that cost more than most people's houses. His corner office on the 42nd floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. His walls were covered with plaques and awards displayed like hunting trophies. Excellence in financial planning. Top producer. Advisor of the year. He was brilliant with other people's money, meticulous with numbers, ruthless in negotiations. His clients loved him. They sent him gift baskets at Christmas and invited him to their summer homes in the Hamptons. With me, he was just ruthless. I remember being 6 years old, bringing him a drawing I had made at school. It was a family portrait, crude the way all children's drawings are, with stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. I had used every crayon in the box, so proud of the rainbow of colors. He looked at it for exactly 3 seconds, then handed it back to me. The proportions are wrong, he said, not looking up from his newspaper. And you colored outside the lines. If you are going to do something, Jessica, do it correctly, or do not do it at all. I never drew another picture for him. I never drew much of anything after that. My mother Helen was his perfect accessory, groomed and polished and utterly cold. She had been a beauty queen in her youth, Miss Connecticut runner-up in 1987, and she had never quite gotten over not winning the crown. She kept her sash and tiara in a glass case in her dressing room, dusted weekly by the housekeeper, a shrine to what might have been. She channeled all that competitive energy and disappointment into being the ideal corporate wife. She hosted dinner parties where every napkin was folded into swans, where the wine was always the right temperature, where the conversation flowed like a carefully choreographed performance. She volunteered on the boards of 3 different charities, not because she cared about the causes but because it looked good, because the right kind of people served on those boards. She played tennis at the country club every Tuesday and Thursday, always booking the court that was most visible from the clubhouse. Her hair was always salon perfect, highlighted every 6 weeks without fail. Her nails were always manicured, her clothes always designer labels worn with studied casualness, as if she had just thrown on this Chanel jacket that cost more than a used car. She once made me stand in front of a full-length mirror for 20 minutes while she pointed out everything wrong with my appearance. I was 14. Your nose is too big, she said clinically, as if she were a doctor diagnosing a disease. You got that from your father's side, and your hips are already too wide. You will need to watch your weight very carefully, or you will end up dumpy. Your hair is too thick, too ethnic looking. We need to start straightening it, and for God's sake, stand up straight. You slouch like a peasant. I stood there, staring at my reflection, watching myself disappear piece by piece under her criticism until I could not recognize the girl looking back at me. Their house in Westchester was a testament to their success and a prison for my childhood. A 6-bedroom colonial with Grecian columns that my mother had specially commissioned, a circular driveway made of imported cobblestones, professionally landscaped gardens that won neighborhood awards 3 years running. The interior looked like it had been ripped from the pages of Architectural Digest, because it had been. My mother hired the same designer who had done a feature spread in the magazine. Everything in that house was expensive and fragile and forbidden. The living room had a white Italian leather sofa that I was not allowed to sit on. The dining room table was an antique that cost $40,000 and had to be polished with a special cloth. The foyer had a crystal chandelier that was cleaned by professionals twice a year. As a child, I learned to move through those rooms like a ghost, barely breathing, trying not to touch anything, trying not to break anything, trying not to be noticed. I was not allowed in the formal living room unless we had guests. I was not allowed in my father's study ever. I had to take my shoes off at the door and walk in socks so I would not scuff the hardwood floors. When I was 9, I accidentally knocked over a vase while reaching for a book. It was some expensive piece from an estate sale, crystal or porcelain, I do not even remember. It shattered on the marble floor in the hallway, and my mother came running like I had set the house on fire. She did not ask if I was okay, did not check if I had cut myself on the shards. She just stared at the broken pieces and then at me with such fury that I actually backed away from her. "Do you have any idea how much that cost?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to find pieces like that? You are careless, Jessica. Clumsy and careless and destructive." She made me clean it up myself, every tiny shard, while she stood there supervising, and then she did not speak to me for 3 days. 3 days of silence, of being invisible in my own home, because I had broken a vase. I was their only child, though they had wanted more. They had wanted sons, I think, or at least a daughter who was more like them. My mother had 3 miscarriages after me, and each one became another mark against my existence, another way I had failed them. If I had been a better baby, easier, quieter, less needy, maybe the others would have survived. At least that is what my mother implied during her darker moments, when she had had too much wine at dinner parties, and her carefully maintained facade would slip just enough for the truth to leak through. "I had such plans," she said once at a Christmas party, her voice loud enough that the guests in the next room could hear. "I was going to have 3 children, maybe 4. A real family. But after Jessica, everything went wrong. My body just gave up." She said this while looking directly at me, her eyes glassy with wine and resentment. I was 16. I excused myself and locked myself in the bathroom, running the water so no one would hear me cry. My father was even worse in his coldness because it was so calculated, so precise. He did not lose his temper or have wine-fueled outbursts. He was always controlled, always measured, and that somehow made it worse. He kept a mental ledger of everything I cost them. When I needed braces, he told me the exact dollar amount, $12,000, and reminded me regularly that I had better take care of my teeth because that was a significant investment. When I wanted to take piano lessons because my friend Sarah played and I thought it looked beautiful, he calculated the cost of the piano, the lessons, the sheet music, and told me it was not worth it. "You do not have musical talent," he said matter-of-factly. "I have heard you sing. It would be throwing money away." I was 11 years old. He did not come to my school events. Not the science fair where my volcano project won 3rd place. Not the spring concert where I had a solo in the chorus. Not the awards assembly where I received the citizenship award. He was always working, always busy with important clients, always had something more pressing than watching his daughter exist. My mother came sometimes, but she spent the entire time critiquing my performance afterward. "You slouched during your solo. You forgot to smile. Your skirt was too short. Everyone could see your knees. Do you want people to think we did not teach you how to dress properly?" I tried so hard to be what they wanted. I brought home straight-A report cards every single semester, from 3rd grade through high school, a perfect 4 gigapascals. And my father would scan the grades quickly, and then find the one teacher comment that suggested room for improvement and fixate on that. "Mrs. Henderson says you need to participate more in class discussions. Are you lazy? Or just unintelligent?" I made the varsity volleyball team as a sophomore, which was almost unheard of, and my mother complained that volleyball was too masculine, that it would make my shoulders broad and unattractive, that no man wanted a wife who looked like an athlete. "You should do gymnastics or dance," she said. "Something elegant, something feminine. Volleyball is for girls who cannot do anything else." I got accepted to 5 universities, including State University with a partial academic scholarship that covered half my tuition. I thought my parents would be proud. I thought finally I had done something right. My father read the acceptance letter, noted the scholarship amount, and said, "A partial scholarship, not a full ride. And State University. Not Yale, not Princeton, not even a good private school. I suppose it is better than nothing, but barely. Do you understand how embarrassing it is when my colleagues ask where my daughter is going to college and I have to say state?" He said this at the dinner table, his tone conversational, like he was commenting on the weather. My mother nodded in agreement. "Catherine Reynolds' daughter got into Brown," she added. "With a full scholarship, we will just have to tell people you are taking a gap year and reapplying to better schools." But I was not taking a gap year. I was going to state. They just could not admit it to their friends. When I suggested I might want to study social work or education, wanting to do something that mattered, something that helped people, my mother literally laughed in my face. We were at breakfast on a Saturday morning, and I had spent all week working up the courage to tell them. I had researched programs, looked at career paths, imagined a future where I actually made a difference in someone's life. "Social work?" my mother repeated, setting down her coffee cup with a sharp click. "You want to be a social worker?" "Oh, Jessica, that is precious. Those are careers for people with no ambition. For people who have given up on being anything important. For people who cannot do real work. You want to spend your life dealing with poor people and their problems? Taking a government salary? Living in some depressing apartment?" My father did not even look up from his newspaper. "She is not going into social work," he said flatly. "She will major in business or economics, something useful, something that might actually lead to a career." So I majored in business, because that was what they wanted, because I did not know how to stand up to them, because I still believed that if I just did what they asked, they might finally love me. I joined the clubs they approved of, the Future Business Leaders and the Investment Club, even though I found them boring. I dated boys from families they knew, boys who went to the right prep schools and whose parents belonged to the same country club. I shaped myself into their image of an acceptable daughter, cutting away pieces of who I really was, molding myself into something they might approve of. And still, it was never enough. Because the truth was, nothing would ever be enough. I could have won a Nobel Prize, and my father would have asked why it took me so long. I could have become a CEO, and my mother would have criticized my hair in the press photos. I could have been perfect in every measurable way, and they still would have found something lacking, something wrong, something disappointing. The worst part was not the criticism or the coldness. The worst part was the hope. Every birthday, every Christmas, every school achievement, some small part of me hoped that this would be the time they would see me. Really see me. That they would hug me and tell me they were proud. That my father would smile and say I had done well. That my mother would look at me with warmth instead of appraisal. That hope was the cruelest thing, because it never died completely, no matter how many times it was crushed. College was the first time I had ever felt free, like I could finally breathe after holding my breath for 18 years. I was 2 hours away from home, far enough that they could not drop by unexpectedly, close enough that I could not use distance as an excuse not to visit. I lived in a dorm room that was tiny and had cinder block walls and a roommate who left her clothes everywhere, and I loved it. It was mine. No one was critiquing the way I arranged my books or telling me my posters were tacky. I made friends who liked me for who I was, not because of who my parents were or what country club they belonged to. I had professors who saw potential in me, who told me my ideas were interesting, who treated me like an adult whose thoughts mattered. For the first time in my life, I felt like maybe I could be someone other than Richard and Helen's disappointment. Maybe I could just be Jessica, whoever that was. That was when I met Marcus. He was a senior when I was a freshman, studying engineering, with an easy smile and kind eyes. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked. He thought my opinions mattered. When he touched me, it was gentle, respectful, nothing like the cold, transactional affection my parents offered. I thought I was in love. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was just so desperate for someone to see me, to value me, that I mistook basic human decency for something more. We dated for 7 months. He met my parents exactly once, at a family weekend event the university hosted. My father took one look at Marcus, with his work-study job and his student loans and his off-the-rack suit, and wrote him off entirely. After Marcus left, my father sat me down in the hotel restaurant and told me in very clear terms that this relationship was going nowhere. Marcus was not our kind of people. He had no prospects, no connections, no future worth mentioning. If I continued seeing him, I would be cut off financially. I was 19 years old and terrified of losing the only lifeline I had, so I said okay. I said I would end it, but I did not. I just got better at hiding it. When I got pregnant at the end of my sophomore year, I was terrified. Marcus was graduating, had a job lined up in Seattle, was talking about our future together. I thought maybe this could work. Maybe we could build something real. I waited until after his graduation to tell him, planned this whole romantic revelation. I bought a little pair of baby shoes and wrapped them up. I made his favorite dinner. He looked at those tiny shoes like I had handed him a bomb. "We need to think about this rationally," he said. "We are too young." He had his career to think about. This was not the right time. He could help me pay for the procedure, but he could not be a father. Not now. Maybe not ever. I sat there in his apartment, the dinner getting cold on the table, those baby shoes sitting between us like an accusation, and I realized I had done it again. I had mistaken basic human companionship for love. I had given my heart to someone who saw me as convenient, not essential. He left for Seattle 3 days later. I never heard from him again. Telling my parents was worse than I could have imagined. My mother cried, but not out of sadness or sympathy. She cried because this was humiliating, because people would talk, because how could I do this to her? My father did not cry. He stared at me with such cold contempt that I actually flinched. "You have destroyed your life," he said, "and you are trying to destroy ours along with it. If you go through with this, you are on your own. We will not support this mistake. We will not acknowledge this bastard. You made your choice, now you live with it." I thought about it. Late at night, alone in my dorm room after I had withdrawn from school, I thought about the easy way out. The way that would let me go back to my old life, get back in my parents' good graces, pretend this had never happened. But every time I tried to convince myself, I would feel the flutter of movement in my belly, and I knew I could not do it. This baby was the first thing in my life that was truly mine. The first thing that needed me, not the version of me my parents wanted, but the real me. So I kept him. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in a not great part of town. I got a job waitressing at a 24-hour diner, working the night shift because it paid slightly more. I applied for every assistance program I qualified for, WIC and Medicaid and food stamps, swallowing my pride every time I had to fill out another form or sit in another waiting room. My parents had raised me to believe that needing help was shameful, that only lazy people relied on government assistance. But when you are 19 and pregnant and alone, you do what you have to do to survive. Leo was born on a Tuesday in March, 3 weeks early, after 18 hours of labor. I had no one with me except the nurses, who were kind but busy with other patients. When they placed him in my arms, still wet and screaming and absolutely perfect, I felt something shift inside me. This was what love was supposed to feel like: unconditional, fierce, unwavering. My mother showed up at the hospital the next day with a diaper bag full of expensive baby items, all still tagged. She took one look at Leo through the nursery window and her face did something complicated. For just a moment, I thought maybe she was softening. Maybe becoming a grandmother would change her. Maybe this baby could bridge the gap between us. Then she turned to me and said, "He has Marcus's nose. Everyone will know what you did." That was the first and last time my mother visited Leo in the hospital. The next 4 years were a blur of exhaustion and financial struggle and fierce determination. I worked multiple jobs. During the day, I was a receptionist at a dental office. At night, I waitressed at the diner. When Leo was sleeping, I took online classes, slowly chipping away at my degree. I wanted to finish. I wanted to prove that I could be more than what they thought I was. Childcare was my biggest challenge. Daycare cost almost as much as I made, and the waiting lists for subsidized care were years long. My neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, a retired elementary school teacher, watched Leo sometimes in exchange for me running errands for her or cleaning her apartment. But she had health problems and could not always be relied on, which is how I ended up having to occasionally ask my parents for help. It was a devil's bargain, and I knew it every time. Every favor came with a price. Every hour they watched Leo came with a side of criticism and contempt. But what choice did I have? I was drowning, and they were the only life raft in sight, even if that life raft was made of razor blades. The arrangement was simple in theory. I could bring Leo to their house twice a week, for no more than 4 hours at a time, when I had work obligations I absolutely could not miss. In exchange, I had to endure their commentary on my life choices, their lectures about responsibility, their passive-aggressive remarks about everything from my appearance to my parenting to my continued existence as their daughter. My father made it clear that this was charity, not family obligation. He would calculate the cost of what comparable childcare would run and remind me constantly of how much money they were saving me, as if I could ever forget. As if the number was not burned into my brain alongside every other way I had failed to live up to their expectations. My mother treated Leo like a temporary imposition, something to be tolerated but not enjoyed. She never got down on the floor to play with him. She never read him stories or sang him songs. She would put on television, usually something completely inappropriate like the news or her real estate shows, and expect him to sit quietly for hours. If he made too much noise or touched anything, she would scold him in that sharp voice that made him flinch. He learned quickly that Grandma and Grandpa's house was not a place to relax. It was a place to be invisible. I hated bringing him there. Every single time, I would sit in my car in their driveway, gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince myself that this was temporary, that I was working toward something better, that soon I would have my degree and a better job and I would never have to subject Leo to their coldness again. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent when you do not have any other options. That Saturday morning in late September started wrong from the moment I woke up. I had been up until 2 a.m. studying for an exam in my business law class. Then Leo had a nightmare around 4 and crawled into bed with me, his little feet cold against my legs. I woke up at 7 to my phone alarm, exhausted and anxious about the job interview I had scheduled for 10. The position was at a retail store downtown, a national chain that sold home goods. The pay was $12 an hour, which was $3 more than I made at the diner, and they offered benefits after 90 days. Real health insurance, not Medicaid. A retirement plan. Paid sick days. The kind of things that most people took for granted but felt like winning the lottery to me. I had bought my interview outfit at a thrift store the week before, spending precious grocery money on a navy blue dress and a black blazer. The dress had a small stain near the hem that I had tried to remove with stain remover, but you could still see it if you looked closely. The blazer had a button missing on one sleeve, but I had sewn on a similar button I found at the craft store. It was not perfect, but it was the best I could do. I showered while Leo ate his cereal in front of cartoons. I did my makeup carefully, using YouTube tutorials I had watched late at night. I straightened my hair with a flat iron I had borrowed from Mrs. Kowalski. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, I look professional. I look like someone who could work at that store. I look like someone they might hire. Leo was clingy that morning, sensing my stress perhaps, or remembering that we were going to his grandparents' house. He did not want to get dressed, did not want to put on his shoes, kept asking if he could come with me instead. "Mommy, I will be really quiet," he said, his big brown eyes pleading. "I will sit in the car and wait, I promise. Baby, you cannot wait in the car, but I will be back really soon, just a couple hours. Grandma and Grandpa will watch you." His face fell and my heart broke a little more. He was 4 years old and already knew that his grandparents' house was not a place of comfort or joy. The drive to Westchester took 45 minutes because I got stuck in traffic on the highway. By the time I pulled into their circular driveway, I was already 10 minutes behind schedule. My mother was standing in the doorway before I even got out of the car, her arms crossed, her expression impatient. "You are late," was the first thing she said. Not hello. Not how are you. Just an accusation. "I am sorry, Mom. Traffic was bad." She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my dress, and I saw her nose wrinkle slightly. "That is what you are wearing to this interview?" "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I thought it looked nice." "Nice," she repeated, like the word tasted bad in her mouth. "Jessica, that dress looks like you bought it at a yard sale. The color is completely wrong for your skin tone. And that blazer? It does not even match properly. How do you expect anyone to take you seriously when you look like you got dressed in the dark?" I felt my face flush hot with shame and anger. I had spent hours picking out this outfit, had spent money I did not have trying to look presentable, and she had torn it apart in 30 seconds. "I am doing my best, Mom." "Well, your best is not very good, is it?" she said, stepping aside to let Leo and me into the house. "Come on. Get in here before the neighbors see you standing on my porch looking like that." The house smelled like expensive candles and furniture polish. Everything gleamed. The marble floors in the entryway were so polished I could see my reflection in them. The antique console table held a massive flower arrangement that probably cost more than my rent. This was the world my parents inhabited, where everything was beautiful and perfect and completely devoid of warmth. My father was in the living room, hidden behind the Wall Street Journal, his reading glasses perched on his nose. Richard was 54 years old but looked older, his hair completely gray now, his face lined with the permanent frown of someone who found fault in everything. He was wearing his weekend casual clothes, which meant expensive khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost $200. He did not look up when we entered, did not acknowledge our presence at all. "Hi, Dad," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. He turned a page of the newspaper, the paper crinkling loudly in the silent room. "Richard, your daughter is here," my mother said, her voice tight with annoyance. Finally, he lowered the paper just enough to look at me over the top of it. His eyes were cold, assessing, finding me lacking as always. "So she is," he said, "late as usual." "The traffic was," I started, but he cut me off. "There is always an excuse with you, Jessica. Traffic, car trouble, work issues, the child. There is always some reason why you cannot manage your life properly. Do you know what successful people have in common? They plan ahead. They leave early. They do not make excuses." "I am sorry," I said again. The words automatic, a reflex honed over years of trying to placate him. "Sorry does not change anything," he said, going back to his newspaper. "You are still late. You still look like something the cat dragged in. You are still going to embarrass yourself at this interview, assuming they do not take one look at you and tell you to leave." Leo was holding my hand so tightly his fingernails were digging into my palm. I could feel him trembling slightly. He was 4 years old and he understood that his grandfather hated his mother. Children understand so much more than we give them credit for. "I need to leave in about 5 minutes, I said, trying to inject some firmness into my voice. "The interview is at 10 and I cannot be late." "Then go," my father said, waving his hand dismissively. "Leave the boy and go. Thank you for watching him. I really appreciate it." "Do we look like we have a choice?" my mother said, sitting down on the white sofa with a heavy sigh. "You have backed us into a corner as usual. What were we supposed to do? Let you miss your interview? Though, I cannot imagine why they would hire you anyway." The words hit like slaps, each one carefully aimed to hurt. I wanted to grab Leo and leave. I wanted to tell them exactly what I thought of them. I wanted to scream that they were cruel and heartless and that I hated having to come here, hated having to beg them for scraps of basic human decency. But I needed this job, and I needed them to watch Leo. So I swallowed all the words that wanted to come out and forced myself to smile. "I will be back by noon at the latest," I said. My father put down his newspaper and stood up, pulling out his wallet. He removed 2 $20 bills and threw them onto the coffee table where they landed with a soft flutter. "Here," he said. "Take this and get out of here. Buy yourself lunch. Get a haircut. Do something about that tragic appearance. And for God's sake, stop bothering us every time you need something. You are 26 years old and you still cannot manage to take care of yourself. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? My colleagues ask about you, ask how my daughter is doing, and what am I supposed to tell them? That you are a single mother working at a diner? That you live in a studio apartment in the worst part of town? That you are such a failure that you have to rely on us for childcare?" "Richard," my mother said, but her tone was not scolding. It was agreeable, like she was just confirming what he said. "I am trying," I whispered. "Trying is not good enough," he said. "Results matter. Success matters. But you have never understood that. You have spent your entire life taking the easy way out, making excuses, settling for mediocrity. Your mother and I gave you every advantage. We paid for your education. We gave you opportunities. And you threw it all away to play house with some boy who did not even want you. The words were designed to destroy me, and they did their job." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of them." I knelt down in front of Leo, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "Be good for Grandma and Grandpa, okay, baby? Mommy will be back really soon." Leo threw his arms around my neck and whispered in my ear, "I do not want to stay here, Mommy. Please do not leave me." It took everything I had not to cry. I hugged him tight, breathing in his little boy smell of strawberry shampoo and sleep. "I love you so much, Leo. So much. I will be back before you know it." When I pulled away, his eyes were wet with unshed tears, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. I was leaving my baby with people who did not love him, who barely tolerated him, because I was desperate and trapped and out of options. "I will be good," he said quietly, and the resignation in his voice broke something inside me. I kissed his forehead and stood up, not trusting myself to speak. I grabbed my purse, leaving the $40 on the table. I did not want their money. I just wanted to escape. "Just go," my mother said, You are going to be late. I walked out of that house and got into my car, and I let myself cry for exactly 2 minutes. Then I wiped my face, fixed my makeup, and drove toward downtown, toward the interview, toward the hope of something better. I should have taken him with me. That thought would echo in my mind for weeks, months, maybe forever. I should have scooped up my son and walked out. I should have told them exactly what I thought of them. I should have chosen Leo over my desperate need for this job. But I did not know. How could I know that in less than an hour, everything would change? That the fragile balance I had been maintaining would shatter completely? That my son would come within minutes of dying and my parents would prove, beyond any shadow of doubt, exactly who they really were? The interview went surprisingly well. The manager, a woman named Patricia, who was probably in her 50s, was kind and encouraging. She asked about my experience, my availability, my goals. She did not comment on my dress or my hair. She treated me like a competent adult who deserved respect. "You would start at $12 an hour," she said, looking over my application. "After 90 days, you would be eligible for benefits, health insurance, dental, vision, a 401k with company match. We also offer employee discounts and opportunities for advancement. I have to interview 2 more candidates this week, but I will call you by Wednesday either way." I left that store feeling lighter than I had in years. This could be it. This could be the break I needed. Better pay, benefits, a real career path. Maybe I could even cut back my hours at the diner. Maybe I could spend more time with Leo. Maybe we could move to a better apartment, somewhere with a real bedroom for him instead of just a corner of my studio. I was mentally calculating budgets and possibilities when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Jessica Martinez?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is Jessica. Miss Martinez, this is County General Hospital. Your son Leo was brought in by ambulance about 25 minutes ago. He was involved in a serious pedestrian accident. You need to come to the emergency department immediately." The world tilted sideways. The sidewalk under my feet felt suddenly unstable. What? What happened? Is he okay? Please tell me he is okay. "I cannot give you detailed information over the phone, ma'am, but you need to get here as soon as possible. Do you know where the emergency entrance is?" "Yes. Yes, I am coming. I am coming right now. Please, please tell me he is okay. The doctors are with him now. Just get here safely." The line went dead and I stood there on the sidewalk, my phone still pressed to my ear, unable to move. Then panic hit like a tsunami and I was running back to where I had parked my car, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I called my parents' house from the car, my phone on speaker as I drove. It rang and went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. "Answer the phone!" I screamed at the dashboard, as if they could hear me. "Answer the damn phone!" The drive to County General took 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. I did not remember most of it. I vaguely recalled running a red light, honking at someone who was not moving fast enough, tears streaming down my face so hard I could barely see the road. I parked illegally in front of the emergency entrance and ran inside. The waiting room was crowded with people, some bleeding, some coughing, some just sitting and staring at walls. I ran up to the reception desk, where a tired-looking woman was typing on a computer. "My son," I gasped out. "Leo Martinez. He was brought in by ambulance. Where is he? I need to see him right now." The woman typed on her keyboard, her expression sympathetic. "Let me get someone for you. Have a seat." "I do not want a seat," I said, my voice rising. "I want my son. Where is my son?" "Ma'am, I understand you are upset, but I need you to calm down so I can help you. Let me page the doctor." She picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. Moments later, a nurse appeared, a young man with kind eyes and purple scrubs covered in cartoons. "Miss Martinez," he said gently, "come with me." He led me to a small consultation room, the kind of room they take you to when they need to prepare you for bad news. The walls were beige and there was a box of tissues on the table and everything about it screamed death and tragedy and endings. My legs gave out and I sat down heavily in one of the chairs. "Where is Leo? What happened?" "No one will tell me anything." The nurse sat down across from me. "Your son was struck by a vehicle in front of a residence in Westchester." A witness called 911 and started first aid. The paramedics got there within 6 minutes. Leo was conscious when they arrived, but disoriented. He was brought here for treatment. "Struck by a vehicle," I repeated numbly. "He was hit by a car?" "Yes, ma'am." "The doctors are evaluating him now." Someone will be out to talk to you shortly. How bad is it? I asked, even though I was terrified of the answer. Please, I need to know how bad it is. The nurse hesitated, and I saw the truth in his face before he spoke. It is serious, but he is alive and the doctors are doing everything they can. I want to see him. As soon as the doctors clear it, we will take you back. The waiting was torture. I sat in that terrible beige room, staring at motivational posters on the walls about hope and healing, and I thought about all the ways I had failed my son. I had left him with people who did not love him. I had prioritized a job interview over his safety. I had convinced myself that it was okay, that it was just a few hours, that nothing bad would happen, and something bad had happened. A worse thing. My baby had been hit by a car. After what felt like forever but was probably only 10 minutes, a doctor appeared. He was middle-aged with graying hair and tired eyes and blood on his scrubs. My son's blood. Miss Martinez, I am Dr. Patterson. Your son has suffered significant trauma. He has a skull fracture on the left side of his head. He has internal bleeding in his abdomen, likely from a damaged spleen. His left femur, the thigh bone, is fractured. We are preparing to take him into surgery to address the internal bleeding and stabilize the leg fracture. I could not breathe, could not think, could not process what he was saying. Skull fracture, internal bleeding, surgery. Is he going to be okay? I heard myself ask, my voice coming from very far away. Dr. Patterson sat down beside me and his expression was grave. I am not going to lie to you. The next several hours are critical. Head injuries are unpredictable, especially in children. The internal bleeding is concerning, but he is young and strong and we have an excellent trauma team. We are going to do everything we possibly can. Can I see him? Before the surgery? Please. The doctor nodded. Just for a moment. He is sedated and on pain medication, but you can talk to him. He might hear you. They took me back to a trauma bay, and nothing could have prepared me for seeing my son like that. Leo, my beautiful boy, was lying on a hospital bed that looked enormous around his small body. His face was swollen and bruised, turning purple and yellow in splotches. There was a bandage wrapped around his head, white gauze already seeping red in one spot. His left leg was immobilized in some kind of temporary splint, elevated on pillows. He had IVs in both arms, monitors attached to his chest, an oxygen mask over his face. He looked so small, so broken, so fragile. I walked over to the bed on legs that barely supported me and I took his little hand, the right one that was not hooked up to as many machines. His skin was warm at least. He was alive. He was breathing. Mommy is here, baby, I whispered, leaning close to him. I am right here, and I am not leaving you. You are so brave, Leo. So brave and strong. You are going to be okay. You have to be okay because I love you more than anything in the entire world. I love you so much it hurts. Please, baby, please be okay. I stayed with him until they wheeled him toward the operating room. I walked alongside the gurney as far as they would let me, holding his hand, telling him over and over that I loved him, that he was not alone, that Mommy was here. When they finally made me let go, when they pushed through the double doors that said authorized personnel only and I could not follow, I stood in that hallway, and I broke. I broke completely. I sank down against the wall and I sobbed, great gasping sobs that hurt my chest, and I did not care who saw me or what they thought. My son was in surgery and might die. The doctors had used words like skull fracture and internal bleeding and critical. My baby, my reason for living, the only good thing in my life, might not survive the night. And my parents still were not answering their phone. I do not know how long I sat there on that floor before someone touched my shoulder. I looked up through blurry eyes to see a man standing over me. He was maybe in his late 30s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, his hands dirty like he had been doing yard work. His face was kind, concerned. "Are you Leo's mom?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. "I am Mark Halstead. I live a few houses down from your parents. I am the one who called 911. Something in his voice made me focus. You? You called? Yes, ma'am. I saw the whole thing. He helped me stand up, guiding me to a chair in the surgical waiting room. I think you need to hear what happened. I sat down, my whole body shaking, and Mark sat beside me. He smelled like grass and soap and outdoors, normal smells from a normal life that felt very far away from where I was. I was trimming my hedges out front, Mark said. It was maybe 11:15. I heard a car coming down the street way too fast. I looked up and saw this black Mercedes, sports car, speeding. Then, I saw a little boy run into the street chasing a ball. My stomach dropped. Leo had been chasing his ball. The bright red one I had bought him for his birthday. The one he loved. The car tried to brake, but it was going too fast. It hit him. He went flying. The sound. Mark paused, his face pale. I will never forget that sound. The car stopped for maybe 2 seconds. Then the driver gunned it and took off. Hit and run. I was going to be sick. Someone had hit my baby and just driven away. Had left him bleeding in the street like he was nothing. I ran over, Mark continued. I used to be a paramedic before I changed careers, so I knew what to do. Leo was conscious but in shock. There was blood coming from his head. His leg was bent wrong. I told him to stay still. That help was coming. I put pressure on the head wound. I kept him talking. I called 911 immediately. Thank you, I whispered. You saved his life. Mark's expression darkened. But your parents? He paused, like he was trying to find the right words. Your mother came out of the house. She saw Leo on the ground, saw the blood, and she started screaming. But she was not screaming about Leo. She was screaming about the neighbors, about what people would think, about blood on her driveway. What? I stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. She kept saying it was making a scene, that it was embarrassing. Your father came out and I told him to call 911, but he said they did not need an ambulance, that they would handle it themselves. My vision swam. They refused to call for help? I had already called, so the ambulance was coming, Mark said. But your father actually tried to stop me. He grabbed my phone, tried to cancel the call. He said they were going to take Leo inside and clean him up themselves. He did not want emergency vehicles in front of his house. The words were so horrifying, so unbelievable, that for a moment I thought I must be misunderstanding. My parents were cold, were cruel, were selfish. But this was something else entirely. I told him his grandson was critically injured and needed immediate medical attention. Mark continued, his voice angry now. I told him that moving Leo could kill him, but he did not care. He kept saying it was not that bad, that I was overreacting, that they would handle it privately. Your mother was behind him agreeing, saying they could drive him to their personal physician. For what felt like the 1,000th time that day, I wanted to vomit. They were going to let him die to avoid embarrassment. Mark must have seen something in my face because he put a hand on my arm, steadying. I did not let them touch him. I stayed with Leo until the paramedics got there. They took over, got him stabilized, got him here. But I wanted you to know what happened, what they did, or what they tried to do. Why are you telling me this? I asked, though I already knew. I just needed to hear him say it. Because you deserve to know who your parents really are. And because if the police ask, I am going to tell them the exact same thing. What they did was criminal. As if summoned by his words, a man in a suit appeared in the waiting room. He was maybe 50, with graying hair and observant eyes, carrying a notebook. Miss Martinez, I am Detective Lawrence Evans with the Westchester Police Department. I need to ask you some questions about the incident involving your son. I nodded numbly. Mark squeezed my arm once and stood up. I will be right over there if you need me, he said, gesturing to the other side of the waiting room. Detective Evans sat down where Mark had been. First, let me say I am very sorry about your son. I understand he is in surgery. How is he doing? They do not know yet. The next few hours are critical. The detective nodded sympathetically. I need to ask you about this morning. What time did you drop your son off at your parents' residence? Around 9:15. And what was the purpose of the visit? I had a job interview. I needed someone to watch him for a few hours. Did you witness the accident? No, I was at my interview downtown when the hospital called. Have you spoken to your parents since the accident? I tried calling them multiple times on my way here. They did not answer. The detective wrote something in his notebook. I have spoken with Mr. Halstead, the witness who called 911. He has provided a statement about what he observed. According to his account, your parents were present when your son was struck and refused to call for emergency services. Is there any history of neglect or endangerment that you are aware of? And there it was. The question that would change everything. I could lie. I could say no, that this was a misunderstanding, that my parents were good people who had just panicked. I could protect them the way I had always protected them, making excuses, justifying their behavior, pretending that their cruelty was normal. Or I could tell the truth. I looked at Detective Evans and I made a choice. My parents are emotionally abusive, I said, and once I started talking, I could not stop. They have been my entire life. They have told me repeatedly that I am a disappointment, a failure, an embarrassment. They only agreed to watch Leo because I begged, and every time I bring him there, they make it clear that he is a burden. My mother treats him like he is contaminating her house. My father calls him a bastard. This morning, my father threw $40 at me and told me to stop bothering them, that they were tired of dealing with my problems. Detective Evans was writing quickly, his expression neutral but focused. Go on. I told him everything. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every time they had made me feel worthless. I told him about the conditions they imposed on watching Leo, the constant criticism, the way they treated him like an inconvenience rather than their grandson. I told him about this morning, about what they had said, about how I had left Leo there because I was desperate and had no other choice. When I finished, Detective Evans looked up from his notebook. Based on what you are telling me and what Mr. Halstead witnessed, there are grounds for a criminal investigation. At minimum, we are looking at child endangerment and failure to render aid. Depending on what else we find, there could be additional charges. My parents are going to be charged with a crime? That decision will be up to the district attorney's office. But yes, it is very likely. He paused. I also want you to know that we are actively investigating the hit-and-run driver. We have a partial plate from a neighbor's security camera and a description of the vehicle. We will find whoever did this. He handed me his card. If you think of anything else, or if your parents try to contact you, please call me immediately. Do not speak to them without an attorney present. An attorney. Criminal charges. Investigation. The words felt surreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. Detective Evans left and I sat there in the surgical waiting room, alone with my thoughts. Mark was still there, sitting across the room, giving me space but making it clear he was not leaving. A stranger had shown me more compassion in the last hour than my own parents had in 26 years. Time moved strangely. I watched the clock on the wall tick forward, but the minutes felt elastic, stretching and compressing. Other families came and went from the waiting room. I saw their worry, their fear, their relief when they got good news. I envied them, their simple tragedies, their broken bones and appendicitis, their problems that would be fixed with time and medicine. My son might have brain damage, might never walk properly again, might die on that operating table, and it was my parents' fault, not just the accident itself. If they had called immediately, if they had let the paramedics work without interference, Leo would have gotten help faster. Those critical minutes they spent arguing, threatening, prioritizing their reputation over his life, those minutes might be the difference between my son living or dying. I tried to hate them. I wanted to hate them with the fire of 1,000 suns, but underneath the anger was just grief. Grief for the parents I had never had. Grief for the love they had never been capable of giving. Grief for all the years I had wasted trying to earn something they would never offer. 3 hours into the surgery, my phone rang, my mother's number. I stared at it for a long moment, watching it vibrate on my leg, and then I declined the call and blocked the number. 30 seconds later, my father called. I blocked that number too. I was done taking their calls, done justifying myself, done accepting their crumbs, done hoping they would change. 4 hours into the surgery, a social worker came to talk to me. Her name was Karen Chen, and she had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Martinez, I am from Child Protective Services. The hospital contacted us because of the nature of Leo's injuries and the circumstances around the accident. This is standard procedure. I need to ask you some questions. I went through it all again. My living situation, my employment, my childcare arrangements, my relationship with my parents. Karen listened carefully, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she said, I want to be very clear about something. You are not in trouble. From everything you have told me and everything the hospital staff has observed, you are a dedicated mother doing your best in difficult circumstances. What happened to Leo was not your fault. It was the result of another driver's negligence and your parents' failure to act appropriately. I started crying again, relief mixing with fear and exhaustion. That being said, Karen continued gently, we do need to ensure that Leo has a safe environment to recover in when he is discharged. Will you be returning to your parents' home? Absolutely not, I said fiercely. Never again. Good. That is what I wanted to hear. She handed me a folder full of information. These are resources that might help you. Housing assistance, childcare programs, support groups for single parents. You do not have to do this alone. Thank you, I whispered. Karen stayed with me for a while, and her presence was comforting. She did not judge me, did not make me feel small. She treated me like a person deserving of respect and support. It was a strange feeling. 5.5 hours after they had wheeled Leo into surgery, Dr. Patterson appeared in the waiting room, still in his surgical scrubs. I jumped to my feet. He is alive, the doctor said immediately, and I nearly collapsed with relief. The surgery went well. We were able to stop the internal bleeding. His spleen was badly damaged, so we had to remove it. He can live a normal life without a spleen, but he will be more susceptible to certain infections, so he will need to stay current on vaccinations. And his head? His leg? The skull fracture is serious but clean. No bone fragments in the brain tissue, no active bleeding. We will need to monitor him closely for swelling and any neurological changes. The leg fracture was successfully set. He will need a cast for at least 8 weeks, probably longer, followed by extensive physical therapy. Will he be okay? Dr. Patterson gave me a small smile. He is going to need time and a lot of care, but yes, I believe he will make a full recovery. He is a very lucky little boy. If he had not received medical attention when he did, if that witness had not called immediately and started first aid, we would be having a very different conversation right now. Lucky. My son had been hit by a car, had suffered a skull fracture and internal bleeding and a broken leg. But yes, he was lucky. Lucky that a stranger had cared more about his life than his own grandparents had. When can I see him? He is in recovery now. Another hour or so, then we will move him to pediatric ICU. You can see him there. That hour was the longest of my life. I paced the waiting room. I tried to drink coffee, but it tasted like ash. Mark brought me a sandwich from the cafeteria that I could not eat. Karen Chen had left after giving me her card and making me promise to call if I needed anything. Finally, a nurse came to get me. She led me through sterile white hallways to the pediatric ICU, a floor I had never wanted to visit. Leo was in a room by himself, surrounded by machines that beeped and whirred, displaying numbers I did not understand. But he was alive. His chest was moving up and down. His heart was beating. He was alive. I pulled a chair up beside his bed and took his hand, careful of the IV line. Baby, Mommy is here. The surgery went well. You are going to be okay. You are so brave. I am so proud of you. He did not wake up, but his fingers twitched slightly in mine. I took that as a good sign. I stayed by his bedside as evening turned to night, as the shifts changed and new nurses came to check his vitals. Mark stopped by once more before he left, giving me his phone number and telling me to call if I needed anything at all. I added his number to my phone and thanked him for the 100th time. Around 8 in the evening, Detective Evans returned. Miss Martinez, I wanted to update you on the investigation. We have identified the vehicle that struck your son. It is registered to Gregory Hampton, a business associate of your father's. The driver was likely his son, Tyler Hampton, age 17. We have officers attempting to locate both of them now. My father's business associate. Of course. There is more, Detective Evans said, his expression grave. When we started investigating the hit and run, we discovered some irregularities in your father's business dealings with Mr. Hampton. Financial Fraud Unit has opened a separate investigation. It appears your father has been involved in an investment scheme that may have defrauded multiple clients of significant amounts of money. The pieces clicked together. My father's success had always seemed too good. The big house, the expensive cars, the luxury lifestyle. I had assumed he was just that smart, that talented. But maybe it had all been built on lies. What does that mean? It means your father is facing serious legal problems beyond the child endangerment charges. The FBI is now involved. The FBI. The word sounded absurd, like something from a movie, not my real life. Your parents may attempt to contact you, to convince you to change your statement, or claim you misunderstood what happened. I need you to understand that you do not have to speak to them. In fact, I strongly advise against it. I blocked their numbers, I said. Good. Keep it that way. After Detective Evans left, I sat in the dim light of the IQ room, watching my son breathe, and I processed what I had learned. My father was a criminal, a con artist, someone who stole from people who trusted him. My mother was complicit, had lived off that stolen money while looking down her nose at everyone else. And they had almost killed Leo to protect their facade. Over the next 3 days, Leo remained in the ICU. He woke up on the second day, confused and in pain, asking for me. I was there, had barely left his side. The doctor said his recovery was progressing well. no signs of brain damage, his vitals stable. On the fourth day, my phone started ringing from unknown numbers. I let them all go to voicemail. The first message was from my father's attorney, requesting that I call him back urgently. The second was from my mother, her voice strained and desperate. "Jessica, you need to call us. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. We need to talk about what you told the police. You were upset. You did not understand what you saw. Please, call us back." I deleted every message without listening to them all the way through. On the fifth day, a man in an expensive suit appeared in the ICUW waiting room. He introduced himself as Martin Blackwell, my father's attorney. "Miss Martinez, I need to speak with you about your statement to the police. I have nothing to say to you. Your parents are facing very serious charges based on your accusations. I think there has been a significant misunderstanding about what happened. Your parents are elderly." They panicked. I turned to face him fully. "My father is 54 and my mother is 52. They are not elderly, they did not panic. They made a calculated decision to prioritize their reputation over my son's life, and I am not changing my statement. If you would just talk to them." "No. Miss Martinez, your parents are prepared to help you financially, substantially. They can set up a trust for Leo's medical expenses, help you get a better apartment, pay for his future education. All they ask is that you reconsider your characterization of events." I stared at him, this lawyer in his $1,000 suit, and I felt something inside me harden into steel. They are trying to buy my silence. They are trying to help their daughter and grandson. "No," I said, my voice absolutely steady. "They are trying to save themselves. And the answer is no. No amount of money will make me lie about what they did. My son almost died because they were more worried about what the neighbors would think than whether he lived or died. That is the truth, and I am not changing it." Martin Blackwell looked at me for a long moment, then nodded curtly and left. I went back to Leo's room and held his hand, and I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Power. I had power. For my entire life, my parents had held all the cards, had controlled every aspect of our relationship through money and guilt, and the promise that someday, if I was good enough, they might love me. But that power was gone now. I did not need them. I did not want them, and I was not afraid of them anymore. Leo was moved out of the ICU after a week and into a regular pediatric room. He was eating soft foods, talking more, even smiling occasionally. The doctors were amazed by his resilience. "Children heal faster than adults," they said, and Leo was proving that. I started making plans. I called my landlord and explained the situation, asked if there was any way to extend my lease despite not being able to work. He was surprisingly understanding, said I could have 2 months' grace on rent. Mrs. Kowalski had started a GoFundMe for Leo's medical expenses that had raised $3,000 from neighbors and people in the community who heard our story. Karen Chen connected me with a subsidized childcare program that had an opening. It was not perfect, but it was something. A start. Mark visited almost every day, bringing books for Leo, coffee for me, sometimes just sitting quietly while Leo slept. He never asked for anything, never made me feel obligated. He was just there, steady and kind, and I found myself looking forward to his visits. "Why are you doing this?" I asked him one afternoon after Leo had fallen asleep mid-sentence. "You do not even know us." Mark considered the question seriously. "When I saw your son lying in that street and your parents more worried about appearances than his life, something in me broke. I have spent a lot of my life being quiet when I should have spoken up, walking away when I should have stayed. Not this time. I saw someone who needed help, and I decided to be the kind of person who helps." I started crying, which had become embarrassingly common. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for saving him." "You are saving him," Mark said gently, "every day. By showing up, by fighting for him, by refusing to let them break you. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met." No one had ever said anything like that to me before. Detective Evans came by regularly with updates. Tyler Hampton, the teenager who hit Leo, had been arrested. He had been drinking at a party, took his dad's car, was going 60 in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. He was being charged as a juvenile, but facing serious consequences. The investigation into my father had expanded. The FBI had discovered that Richard Martinez had been running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme for over 5 years, taking money from clients and using new investments to pay returns to old investors. The house of cards was collapsing. Multiple clients had come forward. The total fraud was estimated at over $15 million. Your parents' assets are being seized. Evans told me. The house, the cars, bank accounts, everything. It will be used to pay restitution to the victims. I thought about that perfect house with its white columns and expensive furniture. I thought about my mother's designer clothes and my father's luxury cars. All of it bought with stolen money. All of it more important to them than their own daughter, their own grandson. Good, I said. 3 weeks after the accident, I got a call from an unknown number. This time I answered. Jessica. My mother's voice, thin and desperate. Please, we need to talk. No, we do not. You do not understand what you have done. We are losing everything. Everything. The house is being taken away. Your father is going to prison. Is that what you wanted? I took a deep breath. What I wanted was for you to call 911 when your grandson was dying in the street. That is all I ever wanted. For you to choose him, just once. But you could not do it. We were going to call, she said, her voice rising. We just needed a minute to think. It all happened so fast. Mark called immediately. A stranger called immediately. But you needed time to think about whether your grandson's life was worth the embarrassment of an ambulance in your driveway. That is not fair. Fair? I almost laughed. You have spent my entire life telling me I was not good enough. You abandoned me when I got pregnant. You treated Leo like he was defective. You threw money at me like I was a beggar. And when he was lying in the street bleeding, you worried about your carpet. So no, Mom, I do not care what is fair to you. If you do not recant your statement, your father will go to prison for years. Years, Jessica. How can you do this to your own father? He did this to himself. He defrauded people. He refused to help a dying child. Those are his choices, not mine. We are your parents, she said, and she was crying now. You are supposed to protect us. And there it was. The fundamental misunderstanding that had defined my entire relationship with them. No, I said quietly. Parents are supposed to protect their children. You got it backward. I hung up and blocked that number too. Leo was in the hospital for 4 weeks total. When he was finally discharged, he was in a wheelchair with a full leg cast from hip to ankle, with instructions for wound care and medication schedules and follow-up appointments. The hospital gave me a list of physical therapists and occupational therapists. The bills were astronomical, even with Medicaid covering most of it. But we were going home, together, alive. Mrs. Chen helped me get Leo enrolled in a special program for children recovering from trauma. I enrolled in an online paralegal certificate program, using the financial aid from the community college and a grant for displaced workers. If I was going to rebuild my life, I needed skills. I needed to understand how the system worked. The criminal case against my parents moved forward. My father was indicted on 12 counts of fraud and 1 count of child endangerment. My mother was charged with child endangerment and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Their trial was set for 6 months out. The prosecutor's office asked if I would be willing to testify. I said yes, without hesitation. In the months that followed, Leo healed slowly. He graduated from wheelchair to crutches to a walking boot. Physical therapy was painful and frustrating, but he never gave up. His hair grew back over the scar on his head. His nightmares became less frequent. I worked nights at the diner and studied during the day while Leo was in his trauma recovery program. Mark helped with transportation, with groceries, with everything. Our friendship deepened into something more, though we took it slow. He understood that I was not ready to trust easily, that I had years of damage to work through. Karen Chen connected me with a support group for survivors of parental abuse, and for the first time I heard my experiences reflected back to me by other people. I was not crazy. I was not overly sensitive. What my parents had done was real abuse, and it was not my fault. I was not broken. I had been broken by people who were supposed to love me, but I was healing. 7 months after the accident, I sat in a courtroom and testified against my parents. The prosecution asked me to describe my relationship with them, the events of that day, what I had been told by witnesses. The defense attorney tried to make me seem vindictive, tried to suggest I was exaggerating. But I had documentation, hospital records, CPS reports, Detective Evans's investigation. Mark's witness statement. The police reports from the scene. My parents' own behavior since the accident. Trying to bribe me. Trying to silence me. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. My father was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims. My mother was found guilty of child endangerment and received a suspended sentence with 5 years probation, mandatory counseling, and community service. Their house was sold, the proceeds divided among my father's victims. I felt nothing when the verdicts were read. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a profound sense of closure. Tyler Hampton, the boy who hit Leo, was sentenced to 3 years in juvenile detention and had his license permanently revoked. His parents were facing civil suits from multiple families for other incidents their son had caused while they covered for him. 1 year after the accident, my life looked completely different. I had finished my paralegal certificate with honors. A law firm specializing in family advocacy had hired me as a full-time paralegal. The salary was modest but steady, with benefits. Real health insurance for both Leo and me, a retirement plan, paid time off, things I had once thought were impossible luxuries. Leo had made a full recovery. The doctors called it remarkable. He walked with just a slight limp that would probably fade completely as he grew. He was in kindergarten, thriving, making friends. He still had the scar on his forehead, a thin white line, but he told people it made him look like Harry Potter. We had moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools. It was not fancy. The appliances were old and the carpet was worn and the walls were thin enough that we could hear the neighbors. But it was ours. We had movie nights and pizza Fridays, and Leo's artwork covered the refrigerator. Mark had become an official part of our lives. We were taking it slow, but he was there for family dinners and weekend outings. Leo adored him, and I was starting to believe that maybe I could trust someone, maybe I could let someone in. The law firm where I worked had a mission statement about giving voice to the voiceless. I helped families navigate the legal system, prepare documentation, understand their rights. I met so many people who reminded me of myself. People who had been told they were worthless, people who did not know they deserved better. I could help them now. I could use what I had survived to make a difference. My parents tried to reach out a few times through their lawyers, through mutual acquaintances. My mother sent a letter from her court-ordered therapist asking if I would consider family mediation. The answer was always the same: no. Some relationships could not be repaired, some damage was too deep, and that was okay. I did not owe them forgiveness. I did not owe them another chance. I owed them nothing. I owed myself everything. One Saturday afternoon in late September, almost exactly a year after the accident, I took Leo to the park. It was one of those perfect fall days, crisp and bright, the kind where the whole world feels renewed. Mark was with us, pushing Leo on the swings, making him shriek with laughter. I sat on a bench watching them, and I thought about the girl I had been a year ago. Desperate, defeated, convinced that she was worthless because that was what she had always been told. That girl was gone. I was still Jessica, still a single mother, still struggling sometimes to make ends meet, but I was not defined by my parents' cruelty anymore. I was not waiting for their approval. I was not breaking myself into smaller and smaller pieces, trying to fit into their narrow idea of acceptable. I was enough. I had always been enough. My phone buzzed with an email from my supervisor. The senior partners wanted to talk to me about a new initiative, a program to provide free legal services to low-income families dealing with abuse and neglect. They wanted my input on developing it. They wanted me. I looked up at Leo, at his joy, at his resilience, at the beautiful life we were building together. I thought about all the other children like him, all the other parents fighting impossible battles, all the people who needed someone to tell them they were not alone. The silence that had almost killed my son was over. I had found my voice, and I was going to use it to help others find theirs. Sometimes walking away is not giving up. Sometimes it is the bravest thing you can do. Sometimes you have to let go of the people who are supposed to love you to find the people who actually do. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you are really worth. I stood up from the bench and walked over to my son, to Mark, to my future. The past would always be part of my story, but it did not get to write the ending anymore. That was my choice now. And I chose happiness. I chose peace. I chose us. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to save yourself? Have you ever found the courage to choose your own well-being over someone else's expectations? If this story touched you, if you see yourself in Jessica's journey, let me know in the comments. Hit that like button to help this message reach others who need to hear it. And subscribe for more stories about survival, strength, and the courage it takes to build a life worth living. Because you are worth it. You always have been.